Hello students, welcome back once again. This is your science teacher here, and this time I'm here with the third chapter of grade 8 NCERT science, that is synthetic fibers and plastics. Students, as you all know that the clothes that we wear on a daily basis are mostly made up of fabrics. And fabrics are made up of fibers which are generally obtained from the natural and as well as artificial sources. So students, in this chapter we basically deal with wool, silk and cotton and many more other examples of natural fibers and fibers like polyesters and terephthalene that are synthetic fibers. So in this chapter we basically learn and discuss about the different kind of natural as well as artificial fibers, means synthetic fibers, and we will also discuss about their characteristics. So let's start. Now students, as I said that the clothes that we wear are basically made up of the fabrics, and generally fabrics are made from the different types of fibers, and these fibers are basically obtained from two sources, natural or artificial sources. And these natural and artificial fibers are generally used for making a large variety of household articles like bed sheets, curtains, pillow covers, etc. And even the artificial sources are used to make the plastic utensils that we used in our house. Students, as you can see here the heading polymer. Students, this word polymer, it basically comes from two Greek words, poly, where poly meaning many and mer means part. Means the word polymer comes from two Greek words. First one poly, that means many, and the second one mer means unit. Students, each fiber is made up of a single unit that is called monomer. As you can see here in this image, students, the basic unit of that fabric that we wear is called monomer, and when these several monomers join with each other and form a long chain of repeated similar subunits, as you can see here, then it is called as polymer, and this whole process is known as polymerization. Students, now as you can see here the heading synthetic fibers. Students, synthetic fibers are basically that kind of fibers that are basically made or created by humans, and that's why they are sometimes known as synthetic and sometimes known as man-made fibers. And students, as I said in the previous section, that all synthetic fibers are basically made up of polymers, and polymers are made up of from monomer, and this monomer is a single molecule that can bond with other identical molecules of their own types to form polymers, and this whole process is known as polymerization. And the example of this synthetic fiber is rayon, nylon, etc. And students, there is one more important point that you should know is that polymers are also found in nature, and the best example is cellulose. Students, cotton is a polymer called cellulose, and this cellulose is made up of a number of single units called glucose. Now let's move on towards the next slide. Now students, as you can see here the heading natural fiber. Students, natural fiber basically occurring naturally in the nature, and humans derive this natural fiber from plants or animals, for example like cotton, wool, silk, etc. Now students, as you can see here the heading, the story of the silkworm. So students, the first natural fiber that we basically get from animals is silk. Students, this silk fiber is obtained from the cocoon of a silkworm, and students, to create 1 kg of silk needs about 10 kg of the cocoon material. And students, the whole process of making silk from silkworm was first discovered in China. And students, when China discovered this process, it was kept by them as a closely guarded secret for a long time. And students, as I said, that to create just a 1 kg of silk needs 10 kg of cocoon material. So it's a long production process, and as well as the material quality of silk is very fine, and due to these two reasons silk is very costly in nature, and it is basically used in making saris, ties, bed sheets. And students, as you can see here, the pure silk has a fine texture, has a fine luster. That's make it different from the other kind of fabrics. Now students, as you can see here the heading, Rayon. Students, this rayon is basically a man-made fiber. It resembles just like a silk in appearance, texture and sign, and that's why sometimes it is also known as artificial silk. And students, as I said in the earlier section, that silk fiber was discovered in China and made from silkworms, and it had a beautiful texture, and that's why it was very costly. So by the end of the 19th century, scientists managed to make an artificial silk-like fiber made by treating wood pulp chemically. And students, when rayon is compared with silk, it is inexpensive but can be woven like silk fibers and gives its appearance just like a silk. And students, it is cheaper than silk, and it can be in a wide variety of colors, and it can be basically used to make home furnishings like curtains and tablecloths, and it is also mixed with wool to make carpets and blankets, and it is also used to make bed sheet, bedspreads, etc. Now the next fabric is nylon. Students, nylon is the first synthetic fiber to be prepared without using any natural raw material. And students, as I said, that nylon is a man-made fiber or synthetic fiber, and it is basically obtained from coal, water and air. And students, the property of nylon that makes it different from the other kind of fabric is it is very light in nature, strong and elastic, and these properties make it different from rest of the fabrics. And students, the other important point that it was developed in 1931. And students, you will amazed to know that a nylon thread is in fact stronger than a steel wire, and hence it is used to make clothes including your socks, parachutes, as well as ropes for rock climbing, ropes, toothbrushes, car seat belts, curtains, tents, sleeping bags, etc. Now students, the next important synthetic fiber is polyester. And students, this polyester is basically made up of the repeating units of a chemical named ester, and when many molecules of ester bond together, then they form polyester. And student, this polyester fiber doesn't get wrinkled easily, and hence a fabric made from this fiber is easy to wash and doesn't need to be ironed, and that's make it suitable for dress material. And one of the popular polyester is terylene. And students, this terylene often known by brand name called Dacron, and this terylene can be drawn into very fine fiber and can be woven like any other yarn. Students, the other important point that you must know about polyester is that it is often used in blended fibers. And students, what is blended fibers? Students, blended fibers are formed by mixing natural and synthetic fibers. For example, poly wool, where the word poly means polyester and wool means wool, that is a natural fiber. So when polyester mixed with wool, it made polywool. In the same way, polycot means mixing of polyester and cotton, and terrycot in the same way mixing of terylene and cotton. And students, as I said, that polyester is strong, wrinkle resistant and water resistant. So it has several uses it can be used to make a variety of textiles and can be blended with natural fiber, and it can also be used for making films, magnetic recording tapes, etc. Now let's move on towards the next slide. Now the students, the next fiber is acrylic, and students, it is also known as fake sheep, means it gives false appearance just like a sheep wool, and that's why it is also called as fake sheep. And student, as I said, it is a synthetic fiber that resembles a wool, and as you all know that the wool obtained from natural sources is quite expensive, whereas the clothes that made from acrylic are relatively cheap, and that's why it is called as fake sheep. And students, the other reason why acrylic is mostly used, because it is available in number of colors and is more durable and affordable than natural wool. And students, acrylic clothes is easier to store than woolen clothes, because woolen clothes need naphthalene balls to protect them from attack by insects, whereas acrylic clothes is synthetic wool and is hence resistant to the action of moths and other kind of insects. And students, as I said, that acrylic can mimic wool as well as cotton at times, and that's why that people who have sensitive skin can wear it easily. And this acrylic is used to make woolen clothes like hats, scarves, gloves, sweaters, blankets, and other home furnishing fabrics. And it is also used in making of garments for babies, as this fiber is machine washable also. And students, all these characteristics of acrylic make it different from other fabrics. Now students, the next one is plastic. Students, plastic is also a polymer like the synthetic fibers, but all plastic don't have the same kind of arrangements of units like the other fibers. So in some cases plastic is linear, whereas in some cases it is cross-linked, as you can see in these two figures. In some cases it is linear, means to say the monomers are arranged in a linear chain-like pattern, whereas in some cases the monomers arrange themselves into cross-linked arrangement like in this way. And students, as you all know that plastic can be recycled, reused, colored, melted, rolled into sheets or made into wires, and that's why due to all these characteristics it is widely used in our daily life. And students, this word plastic is also come from the Greek word plastikos, which means that can be molded or shaped. Now students, there are basically two popular types of plastics. Number one, thermoplastics and thermosetting plastics. Students, thermoplastics is that type of plastic that can be deformed and bent easily on heating, are known as thermoplastic. And these thermoplastics are often used for manufacturing toys, combs, and various types of containers. For example, like polythene and PVC. And students, the thermosetting plastics are that kind of plastics that cannot be softened by heating, or we can say that it cannot be molded on heating. An example like bakelite and melamine. As you can see here in this figure, the first one is the example of the PVC, means to say thermoplastics. And here the next two examples, this one is melamine, means to say thermosetting plastics. And this one here is an example of bakelite. As you can see here, the handles of the pressure cookers, here the blackish structure over here is bakelite. And now you can understand that why bakelite is used as a handles in our cooking utensils, because it is not molded, or it can prevent us from being burned. So students, we discuss here that plastic can be classified into two categories, that are thermoplastics and thermosetting plastics. And students, as you all know, that plastic is generally non-reactive, and it is very light, strong and durable, and it is also poor conductor of heat. And that's why all these characteristics of plastics makes it widely acceptable. Now students, as you can see here the heading, biodegradable and non-biodegradable materials. Students, biodegradable materials basically that kind of materials that decomposes through natural process, whereas non-biodegradable materials are those materials that can't easily decomposed by natural process, and that's why they are known as non-biodegradable materials. Biodegradable materials that decompose by their own, like vegetable peels, fruit peels, etc. Whereas non-biodegradable materials that cannot decompose themselves by their own are plastics. And students, that's why plastic is a threat to the environment, as it is non-biodegradable and its disposal is a very big problem, because it takes several years to decompose and it is not environment friendly, and it also causes pollution. And students, if we try to burn the synthetic material, then it is quite slow process and it doesn't get completely burnt itself easily, and when it burns, it releases lot of poisonous fumes into the atmosphere, causing the air pollution in the process, and that's why it is a threat to our environment. So students, in order to reduce the use of plastics in our daily life, we should implement the 4R principle in our everyday life. And these 4R principles are reduce, reuse, recycle and recover, where reduce means minimize the use of plastic in our daily life, and reuse means reuse the items we already instead of throwing them away. Recycle means that some plastic waste can be sorted and made into other things in recycling factories, and this helps to reduce our carbon footprint. And recover means to convert waste into resources through thermal and biological means. And students, these are the 4 RS habits that are environment friendly. Now students, there is a question that how can we minimize pollution caused by plastic at our home? So student, we should use jute, cotton or paper bags instead of plastics, and we also need to minimize the use of plastic in our daily life. And student, we should also not throw plastics on the road or in the water bodies, and that's how by applying all these methods we can reduce the pollution due to plastic in our environment. Now students, with this topic here, the chapter number 3 is completed. So I will be come back soon with another chapter. Till then, stay home, stay safe, stay healthy.